University's Asuu, saying its recommendations would soon be presented to the president. And at the third of the series of marathon meetings held in Abuja, the government side urged Asuu to allow their accommodation under the Integrated Payroll and Personal Information System at IPIS. Asuu, however, insisted on an independent and domesticated platform for university lecturers, challenging the National Information Technology Development Agency (NITDA) to prove that the University Transparency Accountability Solution (Utas) recommended by it failed the integrity test. Invited parties appeared before the House on Thursday, with the representatives of government making a fresh offer to Asuu to allow a modification of the IPIS to accommodate the peculiarities Utas seeks to recognize. This is just as Speaker of the House, Femi Gbajabiamila, said the reports of the stakeholders roundtable and the recommendations of the Parliament would soon be ready. Gbajabiamila, in his closing remarks at the end of the meeting that lasted 2 hours, pleaded with Asuu to accept whatever the House eventually recommends in good faith. Let's talk about this for a bit. I'm asking you now, by the way, once again, very important to note, there are several issues on the table, not just the payment platform, but the payment platform obviously is one of the major issues that we are dealing with at the moment. And the government is insisting on IPIS, even though NITDA did come out, a government agency did come out to say that IPIS failed an integrity test. So I'm asking you now, should IPIS still be used, considering, even though it failed a government integrity test? To get your take on that, and this lingering Asuu strike as well. But joining me via phone for this conversation from Abuja, Dr. Osin Sado, National Investment Secretary Asuu, immediate past chairman of Asuu at University of Port Harcourt. Dr. Sado, good evening to you. You're welcome to Hard Facts.
Good evening and good evening to our listeners.
Now, let's start on this note. Even though I did read from some reportage what the outcomes so far of the meetings are, you've been a part of these meetings, so you've got first-hand information as to what transpired and what the outcomes have been thus far. So I'd like to ask you, what were the outcomes of the meetings for the House of Reps? And are we seeing any light at the end of the tunnel, or was this still another talk shop at the highest levels?
Well, I think the objective of the meeting was not expected to be conclusive, because we have the government negotiating team that has negotiated with the union up to June, and there have been some intervention. The one by the pro-chancellors, and the initiative also, this one now, which is led by the Speaker of the House of this University. So I think the objective of this engagement is to have a broad-based engagement to help focus on those issues, which ultimately will go back to the negotiating table to finalize and have an agreement. To that extent, I think that engagement has been useful and helpful because the first meeting we had with leadership of the House of Representatives led to the engagement that the House leadership had with government agencies and their representatives last week Thursday, which eventually culminated in the meeting yesterday. And so I think it's progress, and we are quite obvious that if at the level of the Speaker and the leadership of the House, we are having this engagement, and we promise to engage also with the President. I don't think we have any need to doubt that goodwill and the political goodwill and the courage that is required to deal with this conference, that we will succeed. I have every hope that.
Now, Dr. Sado, I do admire your optimism, but I fear that I do not hear it. Now, in your response just now, you talked about negotiations that you have had with government representatives earlier. As a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, the last of those negotiations, you reached a conclusion. All parties were happy with the agreement reached. The government negotiators, Asuu as well. However, the federal government, who sent these negotiators, for some reason, didn't agree with what its own party had agreed with Asuu and would not go ahead to ratify or sign the agreement. Now, if you're still referencing these negotiations with government, I take it to mean then that the latest series of discussions you had with the House of Reps was not negotiation or any kind of fresh negotiation for that matter. Correct me if I'm wrong. So that's the first part of my question. Now, if I'm correct, and these meetings were not a renegotiation or any fresh negotiations, why then is the Speaker of the House of Reps urging Asuu to accept whatever recommendations it makes to the federal government in good faith if these meetings were not a renegotiation?
Well, the meeting was called at the instance of the Speaker. You recall that after we had that agreement, which was on the 16th of June, we delineated him. We were waiting the closure. We were waiting to sign persons. Minister of Labour and some other persons started in the country that we were thrown at first, and suddenly we found out that we are the industrial court. At the time of going to industrial court, apparently any person who is just an observer, a disinterested observer, will conclude that negotiations had broken down. But that wasn't the issue. So once the matter went to court and an interlocutory injunction was given, and the union applied for appeal and stay of execution, you will imagine that it's going to be a prolonged and tortuous journey to come out of that once we entered into that process. So I think that the leadership of the House in the wisdom realized the fact that there has to be some form of mediation to ensure that we have a resolution in good time and to have the university school. So the meeting was at the instance of the House leadership. And as a union, a responsible union, a union that is governed by stable principles and democracy, we are always open to discussion. So we believe that what was being done was to achieve that same objective of having that agreement signed, because there is no way we are going to have a closure to this strike without endorsement of that agreement. But the agreement cannot be endorsed until the parties agree to the terms that are there, either in its absolute form or in some other form of adjustment or compromise. And the parties have not done that. So what we are doing is the process of getting to that point where it will be done. And there is no way you will have this compass job without reference to that document. And until that document is executed, then we do not think that we have ended the discussion. So it is all 12 parts of that agreement, reaching that agreement, signing it, have it executed, that every of these interested stakeholders are working towards that. Both this House intervention, both the intervention by the pro-chancellors and several other unknown interventions that are being done around the clock by this nation.
So just to be very clear, Dr. Saudu, the meetings held recently at the instance of the leadership of the House of Reps were not fresh negotiations, and they were not a renegotiation of any kind. Now, if those were not the case, what exactly then was it about? Was it a simple case of okay, Asuu, remind us what you guys have been saying thus far? What exactly are the issues? government, remind us what you guys have been saying so far. And then, like some sort of arbiter, the House of Reps will now say, okay, having heard all sides, this is what we think should happen. Does that clearly summarize what's transpired?
It will be difficult for me to say yes or no, but let me just explain what has happened. Maybe my previous explanation didn't show enough light. What has happened is, you recall that at the time that we concluded the initial stage of the negotiation with the Economic Brief Committee, the Minister of Labour and Employment made some allegation that at the time of negotiation, that the representatives of government that were sent as observers and advisors were chased away by Asuu. So, which that committee responded through advertorials to clearly say that that didn't happen. So you see that at some point during the course of this strike and negotiation, the parties have been at variance. The parties feel this.
So Dr. Sado, pardon me. So am I right if I say, I'd like us to move on to get this conversation moving forward. Am I right to say that these meetings were simply a restatement of the facts as they are? No, we didn't storm out. No, we didn't push anybody out. No, this is our position. No,
no, it's not.
Okay.
This meeting is a continuation of the process of negotiation. That's the point I tried to make earlier on. It's a continuation because the parties are deeply entrenched in their various positions, and the House is reducing, bringing the parties back together so we can move forward, and that's exactly what it is.
Okay, on the matter of Utas and IPs, we'll come to what Nida had to say about that in a moment. But the agreement that Asuu reached with the Professor Namibian Committee of the federal government, what was the agreement on Utas?
You know, these things are not. Let me say clearly that Utas is not one of the items of negotiation of the new brief committee. And that's why, let me just see if I can make it clear this way. There are principally two legs of that negotiation. The 2009 agreement contains issues like the proliferation of universities, funding for universities, welfare, staff welfare, and other matters. Now, that Utas was not part of that 2009 agreement. Utas is a recent development. So when we negotiate the brief on
and your talk station.
Hello?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So when we negotiate with the government on 2009 agreement, Utas was not part of it. So but we had an engagement with government, not this thing. We had a negotiation with government in 2018, 2020 that led to the suspension of the strike of 2020. In that memorandum of action, it was agreed by government that Utas will be deployed if Asuu could develop a robust system that will be better than ISIS. Unfortunately, after we have developed Utas, government reneged on the implementation of that 2020 memorandum of action. So, and the memorandum of action is different from the 2009 agreement. And what we agree with government was, give us a package that is better than ICE, and we will deploy it. Unfortunately, after we finished that, we got to this political roadblock where government is now claiming that an employee cannot determine. But it was an assignment. It was a challenge that government gave to us to go and get us something. And as I've said, they didn't expect that if they ask the university, any university in Nigeria, if they start claiming any challenge, that there will be a result. And that is the intention of the several governments, where the government since 2009 or even before then, to actually understand the universities, make them relevant in our development so that they can continue. with what they are doing with setting up their own private universities and exploiting Nigerians through high fees.
This hard factor Nigeria info here in Port Harcourt. Have to go for commercial break right now. At the moment, we're discussing a situation with the aftermath of meetings between the House of Reps leadership and stakeholders concerned with the lingering Asuu strike. We'll return shortly after the headlines, so stay with us. Hard facts will be back in a bit.
On your first day on the job, this is what your pension fund investment sounds like.
Station, I'm Dyer, 28 to go before 6 p.m. A conversation with Dr. Sada continues. He joined me via phone from Abuja. Dr. Sada, you're welcome back.
Thank you very much.
We're discussing the FG making a fresh offer similar to Asuu, even though the FG insisted on Utas. And all of this, by the way, is off the meeting between the House of Reps leadership and all the stakeholders concerned involved in a lingering Asuu strike. These meetings just ended recently. Dr. Saldo, you made clear before the break that the issue of Utas versus IPs had nothing to do with your 2000 agreement with the federal government, which supposedly is to undergo some renegotiation, which has undergone renegotiations, as a matter of fact. But these renegotiations have just not been ratified by government, even though its own negotiating team, as happened with the Nimi Briggs Committee, ends up agreeing on terms with Asuu. Now, that said, if the House of Reps recommendation is that the Professor Nimi Briggs Committee's agreement with Asuu be ratified and implemented, however, if the House of Reps recommendation does not include the adoption of Utas with an insistence on IPs, as I suppose the government side is still insisting on, would Asuu call off the strike? Once again, if the Nimi Briggs agreement with Asuu is accepted, ratified and implemented?
It will be difficult for me to answer that question because, as I said, even though the UTAS is not contained in the 2009 agreement, you have seen that in the course of this strike, even those items that belong to the memorandum of action are also part of the issue. And to discuss UTAS separately, whether or not there will be suspension of the strike if every other thing will amount to a unilateral decision, not just being taken by the union, but by me. And I do not have the power to determine that. What will happen is when the House leadership is through with their consultation, they will get back with some recommendations, which will be reviewed by the union. And at that time, the union will determine whether the offers that government had presented will be sufficient to suspend the strike, and whether there are timelines that are also being put in place in actualizing even the deployment of users. So whatever they bring back will determine, because as we know in negotiation, sometimes you have to have some compromise here and there. But that compromise cannot be determined before we see the entire package. So I believe that at the time when they conclude their negotiation or their consultation, and there is a complete package given to the union, that package will be viewed against the backdrop of what we think about it, what is possible in the short run, what is possible in the medium, and maybe what is possible in the long run. But nobody can now, not even the president of Asuu can tell you to answer that question.
Do you? And I'm asking you, personally, your personal opinion. Even though I'm not certain if you might be willing to proffer that, but I'll ask nonetheless. Do you foresee a scenario, any scenario at all, in which Asuu will back down on Utas? And I'm deliberately asking that question because NIGDA, the government agency that supposedly put, all of these applications to some integrity test, IPs, the one currently being run by the federal government, Utas put up by Asuu, and another one, I don't remember the name right now, recommended by... Pardon me, sir? Okay, the one recommended by the Senior Staff Association by SANU. Now, assuming that the government was simply trying to discredit the one brought up by Asuu and NASU, apologies, but I need to Reconnect with my guest to stay tuned. Hard Facts continues shortly. Dr. Sado, you're welcome back.
Thank you very much.
So I was asking a question earlier on, and the question is, now, even if one were to assume, for the sake of this conversation and this question in particular, that the government agency or government were trying to deliberately sabotage or discredit the Asu's recommendation of Utas and the one by Sano as well. Interestingly, the agency of government that put these applications to some integrity test, NIDA, also did say that IPs failed the integrity test as well, which is not surprising, I must say, because Asuu and some other agencies, not a lot I confess, and other individuals have also queried the integrity of Asuu as well. So it wasn't surprising that NIDA said IPs failed the integrity test also. However, one remarkable thing is, in spite of the report that IPs failed the integrity test, it appears that the government is still insisting on continuing with IPs. Thence my question. Is there a scenario, do you foresee any scenario at all in which Asuu will go ahead with the use of IPs?
Well, the danger of, I'm going to answer this question, but I just hope that I will not be misunderstood. The danger in this is that we have not, as I said, we have not come to the point where we are doing the minimum that government can do or what it cannot do. But I don't think it stands to a reason that you have a platform, a foreign platform that is not able to deliver, and you insist on using that platform in your administration. I don't think it stands to any reason. But secondly, you recall that when we started this agitation against the deployment of Utas, and clearly indicated that the main reason was, we had two reasons for doing that. Number one was that to administer the university from outside the university beyond the parts of the council will be a violation of the University Miscellaneous Act. The second point to that is that the peculiarities of the university are different from the core civil service, and so IT cannot meet the operation in the university. And the pushback we got from Nigeria, from the government, public officers, and naive Nigerians was that Asuu was fighting against IPs because Asuu members were doing 4 jobs, 5 jobs, and IPs was to correct all that, and that Asuu was just doing selfish and all that. So what has happened now is that it has come clear out to everybody that we had a point in the issue with the raised about IPs, that IPs is not adequately prepared to deal with the challenges of the university. And I need to point out that there are members of our union who have still not been paid for upward of 30 months as a result of the inefficiencies in the operation of IPs. So going forward, I do not imagine that ICT will be a platform for administering good payroll and personal functions in the university, because it has proved to be grossly inadequate. And I am a bit concerned also that it appears that government agencies are saying we will accommodate those peculiarities that they have been working on in the last 2-3 years, and they are unable to accommodate it. I don't know the magic they are doing to do to accommodate that.
Dr. Sando,
I said,
I apologize, but we have to wrap up the conversation now. Thanks for listening. My guest, Dr. Austin Sando, is former chairman, of course, with Asuu in Port Harcourt, National Investment Secretary Asuu at the moment. Dr. Sando, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Got a break coming up right now. Meeting is at 6 p.m. Do please stay with us.